Imagine this. It's late at night, and you're staring at the ceiling, a familiar weight pressing on your chest. There's no one else awake, no urgent crisis to resolve, but your mind is racing. A quiet yet relentless voice asks, "Why do I keep losing at this game called life?" You do everything right. You're the one who stays late at work, the one who replies within minutes to every message, the one who sacrifices for others without question. And yet, you watch as promotions slip through your fingers, affection is withheld, and respect is never given in return. Those who break the rules, who dismiss you with casual indifference, they seem to rise above it all, leaving you behind. Why does kindness feel like a curse? Why does availability translate to invisibility? And why do you, despite your best efforts, feel like you're trapped in someone else's shadow? What if I told you this isn't your fault? That the very traits you've been taught to cherish, your willingness to accommodate, your readiness to please, are the invisible chains holding you back. This brings us to Dostoevsky's notes from Underground and its unforgettable antihero, the underground man. He's bitter, self-destructive, and defiant, everything society tells you not to be. But here's the paradox. In his refusal to conform, he becomes untouchable. He doesn't win in the conventional sense, but he escapes the game entirely. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only way to truly win. Have you ever noticed how the people who care the most, who overanalyze every word, who apologize for their existence, are the ones who suffer the hardest? Meanwhile, those who ghost, manipulate, and withdraw are the ones holding all the cards. Society tells you to be the bigger person, to kill them with kindness, to rise above. But what if rising above is just another way of bowing your head? What if the only way to break free is to rebel, not with grand gestures, but through deliberate, calculated acts of self-sabotage? This isn't a plea for chaos. It's a call to reframe your understanding of power. The underground man might be a figure of misery, but he's also a figure of agency. He refuses to kneel before a world he despises, choosing instead to sabotage the system designed to exploit him. Now think of the moments in your life where you surrendered pieces of yourself for the sake of peace. The argument you avoided because you didn't want to be difficult. The job you accepted with gratitude, despite knowing you were worth more. The apology you offered for something that wasn't your fault. Every one of these moments was a transaction, a payment made to a world that thrives on your compliance. But imagine this instead. What if you let the argument happen? What if you declined the job? What if you stopped explaining yourself altogether? What if you chose to burn it all down? Not out of recklessness, but as a strategy. The underground man teaches us that freedom lies in this defiance. It's not about destroying everything for the sake of destruction. It's about rejecting a system that profits from your desperation. When you're no longer afraid to lose, you can finally start to win. This isn't nihilism. It's empowerment. The moment you stop playing by the rules designed to cage you, when you choose silence over validation, distance over dependence, you reclaim your agency. And with that, you gain something most people will never know: true power. But how do you do it without becoming bitter, isolated, or lost in the chaos? How do you weaponize self-sabotage without letting it consume you? That's the real question. And the answer lies in mastering the art of silence, withdrawal, and refusal. A skill set the world fears but cannot control. You've been lied to, not with blatant deceit, but with 1,000 quiet lessons, whispered through expectations, traditions, and the subtle conditioning that molds you into a cog, a reliable, agreeable cog, meant to keep a larger machine running smoothly. This machine doesn't care for your well-being. It feeds on your compliance. From your earliest memories, you've been taught that the world is fair, that kindness is its own reward, and that if you simply give enough time, effort, forgiveness, you'll be met with the same in return. But reality doesn't honor these ideals. The coworker who steals your ideas climbs the ladder. The lover who treats you like an afterthought holds your devotion. The friend who only appears when they need something keeps taking, as you rationalize their selfishness. After all, standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, feels selfish, doesn't it? That's what you've been told. But this isn't a coincidence. It's a design. The machine, the system of social norms and unspoken expectations, functions on a fundamental truth. Those who are dependable, accommodating, and emotionally available must never recognize their own leverage. Because the moment they do, the foundation crumbles. Think of how often you've been told to be the bigger person, to turn the other cheek, or to not rock the boat. These aren't lessons in morality. They're lessons in control. Someone has to absorb the world's injustices. Someone has to swallow the disrespect, soothe the conflicts, and make others comfortable. And if you've been raised to believe your worth lies in your usefulness, then you've been groomed for the role. The invisible cage. You don't see the bars, but they're there, constructed from your own impulses. The need to explain yourself to someone who's already decided not to listen. The anxiety that grips you when a text goes unanswered. The guilt that washes over you when you even think about saying no. Every time you rush to fill a silence, soften your stance, or diminish your needs to make someone else more comfortable, you reinforce this cage. This is the cruel paradox of modern virtue. The harder you try to prove your goodness, the more power you surrender. Because power doesn't reward fairness, it rewards leverage. And right now, you have none. You've been maneuvered into a corner where your only options are compliance or guilt. Every attempt to assert yourself is met with accusations of being difficult. Your needs are treated as negotiable, while others' demands are framed as non-negotiable. The manipulator's blueprint. Narcissists, manipulators, and those who climb by stepping on others follow the same playbook because it works. They begin by dangling the illusion of reciprocity. If you just do this one thing, then I'll. But the promise is hollow, and the goalposts shift each time you near them. Next comes weaponized guilt. I thought you were better than this. Or, you're being so sensitive. Your boundaries are reframed as moral failings, and you're conditioned to feel shame for asserting yourself. Finally, they exploit your fear of loss. Their attention, approval, or presence becomes a scarce resource, something you must earn. And you comply. Not because you're weak, but because you've been trained to see your own needs as secondary. The underground man's defiance. Enter Dostoevsky's underground man. He is not a hero in the traditional sense. He's bitter, spiteful, and consumed by his own contradictions. But he holds a rare kind of freedom, the refusal to perform. While others beg for respect, he rejects it. While they chase validation, he embraces irrelevance. His power doesn't come from dominance but from defiance. He refuses to play a game rigged against him, even if it means his own destruction. You don't have to become bitter like him. But you must face a hard truth. How much of your life is spent performing for people who wouldn't notice if you disappeared? How often have you sacrificed your comfort, your peace, your integrity just to avoid being labeled difficult? What if you stopped? What if you let the version of yourself that the world expects, the dependable one, the always available one, the one who never says no, burn to the ground? The liberating truth. This isn't about cruelty. It's about reclaiming your agency. The moment you're willing to walk away from the game, when you let go of the need for validation, approval, and the illusion of fairness, is the moment you stop being controlled. The underground man's lesson isn't to destroy yourself for destruction's sake. It's to recognize the strength in defiance. To understand that sometimes, the only way to win is to refuse to play. But this is where the real work begins. Not in becoming a martyr, but in becoming strategic. How do you wield this defiance without losing yourself? How do you turn this rejection of control into a weapon for reclaiming your power? The answer lies in understanding that the cage was never real. The bars that seemed unbreakable were built from your own beliefs. And now, it's time to dismantle them. A sickness gnaws at the core of modern consciousness, an invisible malaise that grows in the widening gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. The world demands a performance, and you oblige, piece by piece, offering your authenticity as sacrifice for approval. This sickness is not subtle. You know it by its symptoms. It's the breath you hold when rereading that carefully crafted text, the tension in your shoulders as you fake a smile at an offensive joke, the knot in your stomach as you agree to something that violates your boundaries. These are not mere inconveniences or social discomforts. They are the cries of a soul in revolt, pushing back against the betrayal of self, the architecture of self-denial. Modern psychology gives this affliction names: the external locus of control, codependency, the fawn response. But these clinical terms fail to convey the lived experience of watching your true self erode under the weight of others' expectations. Each instance of swallowing your truth to keep the peace, of bending your personality to meet someone else's mold, of prioritizing comfort over authenticity, is not a simple compromise. It's an act of psychic self-mutilation. Imagine your brain as a relentless pattern-seeking machine. With every instance of self-denial, it internalizes a grim lesson: your discomfort is irrelevant compared to others' approval. Your boundaries become negotiable, your worth a commodity measured by the emotional labor you expend. Nietzsche foresaw this in his warning: the surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. Today, this corruption festers as a pervasive terror of disapproval, a fear so potent that many would rather suffocate their authenticity than risk even a fleeting moment of misunderstanding. The machinery of social control. This conditioning begins early, often before we understand the game we are being taught to play. From playground dynamics to corporate hierarchies, the unspoken rules of social control shape us into compliant participants in a system designed to exploit. The altruism scam. Society celebrates selflessness, praising those who sacrifice for the greater good. Yet beneath the surface lies the truth. The martyrs receive plaques and hollow words, while those who act strategically reap the tangible rewards. We are conditioned to equate depletion with virtue, to see our exhaustion as a mark of nobility. The empathy double bind. Compassion is framed as a strength, but in practice, it often becomes a liability. Emotional predators, whether manipulative partners, exploitative colleagues, or toxic friends, hone in on empathy like a predator sense weakness. They weaponize it, using your compassion against you, until you find yourself giving endlessly to relationships that drain you, doubting your perceptions, and questioning your worth. The trauma of normality. Perhaps the most insidious of all is the demand to sand down your edges, suppress your intensity, and hide your eccentricities. This act of conformity promises social protection but delivers none. Whether you stand out or blend in, the system punishes you in different ways, leaving no safe path. The result is a gradual erosion of vitality, a compromise that extracts far more than it gives in return. The underground man's revelation. Dostoevsky's underground man is not a figure of aspiration but of warning. His infamous declaration, "I am a sick man, I am a spiteful man," is a lament and a rebellion. It is not confession but defiance, a war cry against a world that demands he play along. The underground man represents what happens when the dissonance between your authentic self and your performed self becomes unbearable. His bitterness is the result of years spent pretending, of swallowing the lie that fitting in would lead to fulfillment. His descent into spite and self-sabotage is not inevitable, but it is a natural endpoint for those who can no longer paper over the gaps between their inner and outer worlds. Today, most never reach that breaking point. Instead, they numb the discomfort with curated social media profiles, endless productivity, or chemical escapes. But these distractions come at a cost. The soul withers under neglect, trapped in a cycle of superficial validation and deeper despair. The path through the wreckage. What is the way out of this cycle? It is not to embrace misanthropy or bitterness but to embark on a journey of awakening, a reclamation of the self that society has tried to suppress. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of the fragmented self into a cohesive whole. Nietzsche described it as the will to power, not as domination over others, but as mastery over one's own conditioned impulses. Recognizing the cost of compliance. The first step is to confront the price of compliance. Every act of self-betrayal is not an isolated event but another brick in the prison of your false self. The discomfort you feel when suppressing your truth is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's your soul resisting the mold that others are trying to force upon it. Developing psychological PP. Navigating a toxic social environment requires emotional armor. This isn't about shutting people out but about protecting your core. It means learning to separate your sense of self-worth from external validation, to recognize manipulation for what it is, and to draw boundaries without guilt. Embracing your uniqueness. The qualities that society often dismisses as flaws, your intensity, your sensitivity, your refusal to fit neatly into categories, are not liabilities. They are your evolutionary advantages in a world that values conformity over authenticity. These traits are your compass, guiding you toward a life that aligns with your true self. Rebuilding from the wreckage. The tragedy of the underground man is not his defiance, but his stagnation. He tears down the false self but builds nothing in its place. To truly reclaim your authenticity, you must go further. This means dismantling the false self without succumbing to destruction for its own sake. It means emerging from the wreckage as a sovereign being, one who has stopped asking permission to exist. This is the challenge of our time: to resist the machine, to embrace your individuality, and to create a life that is yours and yours alone. The moment comes when you realize, no one is coming to save you. Not the mentors who dispense cliches about patience, not the therapists who pathologize your anger, not the spiritual gurus selling enlightenment in 30-day packages. Salvation, if such a word still holds meaning, must be self-engineered. This is where philosophy stops being abstract and becomes tactical, where wisdom transforms from something you know to something you do. The 3 acts of strategic rebellion. 1. The art of disappearing. There exists a peculiar power in becoming selectively unreachable, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as reclamation. When you stop being perpetually available, you accomplish 2 radical things simultaneously. You break the conditioning that ties your worth to responsiveness, and you force the world to reckon with your absence. This isn't about ghosting or passive aggression. It's about cultivating what the Japanese call ma, the sacred pause, the negative space that gives meaning to the notes. Let emails linger. Leave messages unanswered. Attend fewer gatherings. Watch as an extraordinary thing happens. People begin qualifying themselves to you. 2. The discipline of indifference. The underground man's genius, and his fatal flaw, was caring too much about not caring. True power lies in authentic detachment. When you master the ability to witness others' attempts to provoke, manipulate, or seduce without rising to the bait, you achieve something alchemical. Their efforts to control you become proof of your autonomy. Practice this. Next time someone tries to guilt, flatter, or provoke you, respond with what the Stoics called apatheia. Not the absence of feeling, but the sovereignty over which feelings deserve your engagement. A raised eyebrow often speaks louder than an argument. 3. The economy of words. Modern society runs on a currency of unnecessary speech, explaining, justifying, filling silences with nervous chatter. The revolutionary act? Say only what must be said. When challenged, I don't have a position on that. When pressured, I'll consider it. When baited, silence. This verbal austerity accomplishes what 1,000 arguments cannot. It reveals the poverty of others' demands. As the Tao Te Ching observes, he who knows does not speak, he who speaks does not know. The underground man upgraded. Dostoevsky's protagonist failed not in his diagnosis but in his prescription. His self-destruction was theatrical but ultimately impotent. The modern strategist goes further. 1. Controlled demolition. Instead of indiscriminate self-sabotage, surgically dismantle only the parts of your life that demand your disintegration. Quit the soul-crushing job, but have a plan. Leave the toxic relationship, but cultivate self-sufficiency. 2. Energy arbitrage. Every interaction is an energy transaction. Start demanding ROI. Invest only in people and pursuits that give back as much as they take. 3. Shadow integration. Where the underground man wallowed in his darkness, the strategist weaponizes it. That anger? Channel it into creative work. That spite? Let it fuel your boundaries. That cynicism? Use it to detect manipulation. The invitation. This isn't about becoming heartless. It's about becoming strategic with your humanity. The world has always been divided between those who understand power and those who suffer it. Your choice isn't between kindness and strength, but between being the chess player or the pawn. The underground man's final mistake was believing freedom could be found in the basement. Yours doesn't have to be. There is a lie we often tell ourselves, a comforting falsehood whispered in the quiet moments after encountering something profound. It goes like this: understanding alone is enough. We convince ourselves that merely recognizing a truth, feeling its resonance, and nodding along is tantamount to transformation. But the uncomfortable reality is that insight without action is little more than intellectual self-indulgence. It creates the illusion of progress while leaving the essence of who you are untouched. The underground man understood this lie all too well. His tragedy was not ignorance but paralysis. He possessed an acute awareness of his condition, diagnosing his malaise with brutal precision. Yet, this awareness became a prison of its own, an endless cycle of reflection without resolution. This is the danger that lies before you now, nodding along to these words, feeling their weight, even sharing them with others as a signal of understanding, but waking up tomorrow and continuing the same old patterns of self-betrayal. This is the threshold moment. The point where you must choose whether to be a spectator or a participant in your own liberation. Will you merely observe these truths, or will you step into the discomfort of living them? The journey begins with a declaration. Across cultures and history, there is immense power in the act of speaking a truth aloud or committing it in writing for others to see. When you declare, "I choose sovereignty," you are not merely stating a preference, you are drawing a line in the sand of your own psyche. Public commitments create tension, what psychologists term cognitive dissonance, between the person you've been and the identity you now claim. Your mind, ever eager to resolve such tension, will pull your actions into alignment with your words. This is why rites of passage and initiation rituals often involve public vows. The presence of witnesses solidifies your commitment, making it harder to turn back. But words alone are not enough. After the declaration comes the withdrawal. For the next 48 hours, practice the art of strategic absence. This is not about punishing others or cutting ties impulsively. It's about detoxing from your own addiction to approval. Let the urge to over-explain rise and fall without acting on it. When someone fishes for an apology you don't owe, resist the bait. When guilt creeps in, whispering that you're being selfish, examine it with curiosity rather than compliance. This process may feel like withdrawal, complete with moments of discomfort and anxiety. Yet, it is within these silences that clarity emerges. Pay close attention to what surfaces during this time. You may feel a pang of unease, a sense of emptiness where the old patterns once thrived. But alongside this discomfort, you'll notice something else: freedom. The energy once spent maintaining others' comfort becomes yours again, a resource to be allocated according to your priorities rather than their expectations. The final step in this initiation is reclamation. Identify one area of your life where your power has been leaking. Perhaps it's a group chat that demands constant engagement, a colleague who monopolizes your time, or a family member who expects unending emotional labor. Start small but intentional. Cancel a commitment made out of obligation. Leave a message unanswered until you genuinely want to respond. Say no to a request without offering the justifications that dilute your resolve. Observe what happens next. The sky does not fall. The world does not end. People adjust, recalibrating their expectations faster than you might imagine. This quiet reclamation is not an act of defiance against others, it's an act of allegiance to yourself. This, however, is only the beginning. The road ahead demands deeper introspection and even greater courage. As you progress, you will confront another pervasive lie: the belief that you must always be understood. We crave understanding because it feels like validation, but in truth, it can be a shackle. The need to explain yourself, to justify your decisions and existence, often stems from an internalized insecurity. True liberation comes when you relinquish the compulsion to be understood and instead embrace ambiguity. Imagine the power in letting others misunderstand you, allowing their assumptions to stand unchallenged. It is not an act of submission but of strategy. Ambiguity becomes your shield, a refusal to waste energy on endless explanations. By not justifying yourself, you create space for your actions to speak louder than words. But that's a lesson for another time. For now, the question that matters most is this: will this be another fleeting moment of inspiration, or will it mark the beginning of something real? True transformation does not announce itself with fanfare. It unfolds quietly in the spaces between your old self and the person you are becoming. It happens in the unobserved moments when you choose differently over and over, until one day, the version of you who needed this advice no longer exists. The strongest revolutions begin in silence. The journey from self-betrayal to sovereignty starts with a single, decisive act of defiance, not against others, but against the systems and conditioning that taught you to shrink, to seek permission, to exist in half measures. Understanding these truths is not enough. Transformation demands action. If this exploration resonated with you, let it move you to act. Subscribe to this journey, not just for the content but for the commitment to delve deeper into the psychology of power, the philosophy of self-mastery, and the art of strategic living. Share this message with others, because liberation is contagious. But most importantly, make your commitment tangible. Write it, speak it, declare it to the world and yourself: I choose sovereignty. These words are more than a declaration. They are a contract, a vow to stop negotiating your worth. The underground man's rebellion was solitary and self-destructive. Yours doesn't have to be. The first step is to step out of the shadows and into the light of your own agency. The game is rigged, but you don't have to keep playing by its rules. It's your move.